Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, Episode 273, Who We Are and What We Do. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I'll continue with Independent Spiritual Foundations. Here, I look at how to establish an independent spiritual foundation. Later on, it's who we are and what we do. In this section, I look at our activities and how they can change, and how all this is a sign of impermanence. This show will feature background footage from Rattlesnake Lodge. Rattlesnake Lodge is located on the Blue Ridge Parkway, northeast of Asheville. So, get on the parkway at US 74A or US 70 or wherever in Asheville, heading north. Maybe about 8 miles approximately past US 70, you'll come to the turnoff for Ox Creek Road and Elk Mountain Scenic Highway. The sign I think will say Weaverville for the exit off the parkway. Anyway, you follow the road and then it will split. You stay on Ox Creek Road. You go down maybe about a quarter mile or so. There'll be two pull-offs where there looks like there's a trail once you pass Elk Mountain Scenic Highway. So you actually stop at the second pull-off. You go further down the mountain than the first pull-off. So you stop at the second pull-off. And you go on the trail and then you take a left when you hit the next trail. You follow that trail and that will take you to Rattlesnake Lodge. This is the Mountains to Sea Trail. However, once you reach Rattlesnake Lodge, there will be a trail going off to the right. That goes back down to the Blue Ridge Parkway. If you continue along the Mountains to Sea Trail north, you'll find another trail that goes to the right that's marked with blue blazes. Both of these trails that are marked with blue blazes that go off to the right converge on the same spot right before a tunnel on the Blue Ridge Parkway. This is a little farther north than Ox Creek Road and Elk Mountain Scenic Highway. Well, anyway, the thing is, if you continue a little farther north on Mountains to Sea Trail, beyond both of the blue trails that go off to the right, the terrain changes. You'll get into a lot of mountain laurels and moss-covered rocks. It's kind of scenic, a different terrain compared to the more open woods where it is below Rattlesnake Lodge. Well, anyway, let's continue with independent spiritual foundations. That should be your motivation. Everything else will follow. Sure. So, once you have a proper moral foundation, you have to make sure you do the right things for the right reasons. Go over this in your mind and verify this with other people who you hold in high regard, well, in a spiritual sense. Anyway, so, in the case with me, in my case, I have the imaginary territories of thought. Imaginary territories that are governed by your value system. With your value system, which includes your motivation, Well, that determines the imaginary territory you are from, how well your empathy performs, how much you care about others, what your motivation is. All of that shapes the imaginary territory you are from, which changes as your morality changes. So you can be from many imaginary territories throughout your life, and your imaginary territory can change, sometimes moment to moment. But anyway, so the imaginary territory I typically associate myself with, the East Side imaginary territory, which values empathy and caring about others and looking out after poor people and the weak, the young, and the elderly, and the mentally disabled, making sure that all people have equal opportunity, that no one gets disenfranchised. So, the East Side imaginary territory, with that goal in mind, gives assistance to all imaginary territories and gives assistance to everyone. And that way, everyone is benefiting and no one feels disenfranchised. But the East Side imaginary territory values truth over deception and favors having, well, one lifetime partner over many lifetime partners. Sure, at least if this is possible, having the situation set up so you could be with one person for many years and truly get to know them and appreciate them for what their personality is like. The West Side imaginary territories focus on their looks and how much money they make. And if they find someone who makes more money or looks better, they quickly switch over to them. And onward and upward, advancing till they find the best looking person with the most money. Sure, that is the goal of the West Side. They might not care that much about hurting people's feelings or affecting them adversely. The main thing is advancing one's personal goals for money and enjoyment. Well, that's the West Side. But anyway, so the East Side imaginary territory gives assistance to all the imaginary territories. But let's go on with establishing an independent spiritual foundation. Well, sometimes you have to separate religion from your church. Otherwise, you could get stuck in a church that might not be quite right for you. Remember, no church is perfect because churches are run by people and everyone falls short of the glory of God. So you have to separate your idealized religion from the church you are in, which might not be ideal. And you have to be independent. You have to see yourself independent of your church sometimes. So if you see yourself independent of your church, then it is easier to remove yourself from your church and find a new church. Sometimes you just have to do this, as you might move to a new town that is far away. Or there might be internal conflicts might arise within your church and force you to leave. Well, you have to be ready to leave by having that independent perspective and not getting your church and your religion confused. Remembering that your religion is independent of your church and that you can take your religion with you and find a new church. Sure, you have to be independent Sometimes, as I said, if you get stuck in the wrong church for too long, it can affect you adversely. And when you separate your religion from your church and move to a new church, well, sometimes you can even move to a new religion as well, as long as you have a sound, independent, spiritual foundation. Sure. Also, there can be many foundations. That's why the title is pluralized. There's many ways to skin a cat. There are many approaches to this, and there are many spiritual foundations that are valid. However, in theory, they all would be somewhat similar, emphasizing compassion and empathy, love, and caring about others. Sure, that sets the stage for the best independent spiritual foundation. Anyway, however, there's many personal and moral variations to this. No one agrees about everything. So, that's why there's many foundations, each appropriate to the individual. Anyway, you have to tailor this to your personal needs. Make your independent spiritual foundation personal. Well, sometimes you got to separate your religion from your personal philosophy. This could be tricky. Well, in theory, in an ideal sense, your religion would dominate your philosophy and rule over it at all times, guiding your philosophical decisions with your religion and morality. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes there are conflicts which can spontaneously form, and conflicts which can be quite unique to your situation. These conflicts have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes you use your philosophy to make a moral decision that is in conflict with your religion. So, sometimes you step outside the mold. You have to go rogue sometimes and be independent of your religion, at least temporarily. Sometimes, as I said, conflicts will form and basically put pressure on you to do this. Sometimes it is the right thing to do, to act outside your religion, and sometimes it is the wrong thing to do. You have to evaluate this on a case-by-case basis, and perhaps not stray too far out of your religion. Remember, no one knows the will of God, and each religion can be interpreted in many ways. So perhaps you're not straying too far outside your religion after all. Perhaps everything's hunky-dory and you're well within the bounds. It's just that other people might think you have strayed outside your religion. Well, God is the one who ultimately decides if your decision was right or wrong. And even though other people might say you were wrong, sometimes, in the same case, God will say, you were right. You were right for straying outside your religion with your philosophy. Sure, sometimes your religion, well, doesn't always have to dominate your philosophy. Sometimes things need to be a little more personal to allow for special situations. However, don't get carried away with this. This should be a rare event, not something that happens all the time. If it is, perhaps your morality might not be where it should be. Perhaps it might be too shallow. You need to have depth to it. And if you have depth to your morality, well, then your morality and your religion will guide your philosophy nearly all the time, with a few rare exceptions for these weird conflicts that might form. Sure, where you might have a conflict with a personal friend of yours or a family member. Anyway, just try to do your best. And if in doubt, just think about it and pray that God guides you in the right direction. So, establishing an independent spiritual foundation can have many benefits, and it can help you, well, with your emotional state later in life. It could give you stability. If your church crumbles around you, you could stand strong on your independent spiritual foundation and use that to advance to a new church or even a new religion, because you will know how to make sure things are right, and you will be able to keep things right and prevent yourself from straying off the wrong path, because you know what to do, because you have empathy and you care about others and you care about yourself, and you're ready to take care of yourself first, then help others, making sure that everything is balanced and done in a proper way with respect to your morality. Sure, an independent spiritual foundation can go a long way in helping you have a better life. Now it is time for who we are and what we do. Here I look at our activities and how and why our activities change, and how we deal with that, and how this is all a sign of impermanence, and what that all means. Anyway, so let's just dive into it. So, who we are is to some degree defined by what we do. Sure, that's why I lump them together, who we are and what we do. So, since what we do is part of who we are, we have to look at this and look at what we do and how what we do and why these things change, why our activities change. So, sometimes our favorite activity, what we just love to do more than anything else, is no more. It just ceases to exist. It's an awful prospect. Perhaps one I'm facing myself. Well, I guess my favorite activity, or at least one of them, well, is seeing further in Bob Weir and Rat Dog, Phil Lesh and Friends. And to think that soon, perhaps too soon, there'll be no more concerts. Oh no, no more Further, no more Rat Dog, no more Phil Lesh and Friends. I just really enjoy going to these concerts. I always have a good time. I like interacting with the fans. They always seem to be such nice people. How do you get such a bunch of nice people all together in one place. Well, I don't know, but it always happens. Every concert, even though I've been to probably 100 or so. Always a wonderful group of people. And great music to go along with it. Sure. Well, I guess that all depends on your taste of music, obviously. A lot of people don't appreciate the Grateful Dead. But that's okay. I don't appreciate a lot of other music. To each his own. But anyway. So, our favorite activity, whatever it might be, might cease to exist for various reasons. Either it just ceased to exist in general, or perhaps moving or changing one's friends can change your activities too. Sometimes with new friends, we just have to adapt to their activities. And why not? Sure, we are often more flexible than we realize. And sometimes something that you think is boring is actually kind of fun once you give it a try, once you do it. So try different things, especially if you have new friends or you have moved to a new locations. Adapt to new hobbies, new activities, new things you like to do. Sure. But it's always nice to have old hobbies that are wonderful as well. But what else could change what we do? Obviously, extreme trauma could change one's activities. This could be an extreme mental shock, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, or it could be a physical shock, such as extreme injury, like multiple broken bones. Well, anyway, when we deal with extreme trauma, well, that often changes what we do. We just have to try to work past the trauma if we can. And if we can't, we have to work within the framework of our new limitations and find new activities and hobbies that fit well within them. And perhaps slowly, over time, for physical rehabilitation, for physical injuries, and for mental trauma, perhaps with really good counseling, with a good psychotherapist, and perhaps good medication, if warranted, perhaps could lead us further in the direction of having a wider range of activities. But anyway, so that causes us to adapt to new situations. Fortunately, a lot of us are lucky and we don't have to deal with extreme mental or physical trauma. But there's another kind of trauma which is unfortunately more common. Or at least I'm assuming it's more common. And that's the situation of financial decline. When we're just too broke to do anything, especially if we were once semi-wealthy, or at least wealthy enough to afford to do some wonderful things. Let's say go skiing. And then suddenly, we're too broke to ski. We don't have enough money to go skiing anymore. Oh no, we're brokenhearted. We just used to love to ski and now we can't. Or perhaps you love to go to the movies and you can't go to the movies anymore because you can't afford them. Oh well. I know it's a little disillusioning, but we have to somehow move past that. Move past the financial decline and its changes to our activities. And even though our activities have changed with us being a little poorer, well, we can have a good attitude. Nevertheless, even though we are in a whole new situation and we have limited activities because of our limited budget, we could be happy with what we got and create new situations that are enjoyable, things that are fun to do that don't cost any money, such as hiking, one of my favorite activities, and, of course, great exercise as well. The hike I described earlier from Ox Creek Road to a little past Rattlesnake Lodge, well, that took me an hour and 20 minutes. So, that's a good stretch of hiking. That's what you need. Well, an hour and 20 minutes to go up and maybe a little under an hour to go down. Anyway, we need to look beyond our activities in order to adopt a better attitude. We have to look beyond our health, our wealth, our social status, and so on. We have to realize that all of this is impermanent. Everything is going to fade away and disappear. Us, our social status, our wealth, our health, our education and knowledge, and so on. None of this is going to last forever. So we have to realize that although it's nice to have all this, it's not the center of everything. For the center of everything is our motivation and our compassion. Things like that. Sure, that is what is eternal. That's what lasts forever, is things like morals and values, and what motivates us.
Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, caseywaters2@caseywaters.com.